No one could explain why a star at the very height of her brilliance would choose to step away from the stage without leaving so much as a farewell. Mia Sara, the face that once captivated American audiences with a single backward glance. The beauty who turned Ferris Bueller's Day Off into a cultural icon, vanished from Hollywood as abruptly as if she were fleeing something even greater than fame itself. No scandal, no controversy, just a disappearance so quiet it became unsettling. Behind that summer sun smile were fractures no one ever saw. Being placed in front of the camera at 17, the pressure to become an icon before she had time to understand who she was, roles that grew more famous even as they pulled her further away from her real self. The public saw only Princess Lily in Legend, the fearless lover in Timecop, or the shadow-drenched Harley Quinn in Birds of Prey. But never the sleepless nights when Mia lay awake, wondering whether success was something that had to be paid for with peace of mind. When pieced together, Mia Sara's story reveals a journey shaped not only by glamour, but by loss, vulnerability, and a bold choice that Hollywood, even today, has yet to fully understand. Born in 1967 in Brooklyn Heights, a neighborhood where old brownstones stand still, gazing down at the restless flow of life, Mia Sara grew up in a household where art quietly seeped into every corner, every small step she took. Her father, Jerome Sara, was a photographer and artist. Her mother, Diana, worked as a stylist and handled a camera with equal confidence. Their apartment was often filled with the sharp scent of darkroom chemicals mingled with the smell of freshly cut fabric, an unusual blend that became the warmest, most enduring scent of Mia's childhood memories. Within that warm world, everything moved to its own rhythm. A father patiently waiting for the light to fall just right. A mother carefully adjusting every small fold along a length of fabric. And little Mia, her eyes always seeming to listen to a piece of music only she could hear, standing nearby, quiet, refined, and so sensitive that the slightest shift in the air was enough to stir her heart. Her shyness did not make her retreat. Instead, it placed her in the role of a natural observer, someone who saw more deeply, felt more intensely, and rarely rushed to speak unless the words truly needed to be said. When she entered St. Anne's School, the renowned non-traditional arts school in Brooklyn, Mia found a space that allowed children like her to breathe at their own pace. No uniforms, no rigid molds, no constricting structure, only unfinished paintings, the sound of a piano echoing through the hallways, and long conversations about emotion and creativity. In that environment, Mia gradually came to understand that she was not born to stand under harsh lights, where every flaw is magnified. She preferred quieter corners, places where people listened to one another through their eyes, where even a single breath could become a language. Her younger sister Cassie arrived like a new piece completing the small family, filling the house with more noise and movement. Yet Mia still preserved a private world of her own. A small corner of a table where she read, a notebook where she sketched nameless shapes, a window where she sat watching midday light spill across the porch, feeling the rhythm of her soul slow down. In those moments, no one knew that the fragile sensitivity being nurtured would one day become what set Mia apart as an actress, and also what would make it so difficult for her to find peace in a world that demanded too much. And when she appeared on screen for the first time, many assumed that Mia had been born to stand before the camera. But the truth began much earlier. In long afternoons spent in her father's darkroom, dim light filtering through strips of developing film, the sound of her mother arranging clothes on their racks, and a family that learned to tell stories through images before they ever did through words. Art did not come to Mia by choice. but by immersion, like the very breath of that small home in a Brooklyn neighborhood. It was precisely that foundation, fragile and quiet, yet profoundly deep, that opened the first door leading Mia into the world of cinema, a world she never chased, yet one that welcomed her through a chapter of destiny, carrying her from an introverted girl in Brooklyn to the status of a generational icon. Those years were like soft earth nourishing a slender root, silently guiding Mia toward her first encounter with a film set, not through ambition, but through intuition. When a small role in All My Children came her way in 1983, Mia was still a Brooklyn girl who carried far more within her than she ever put into words. Stepping onto the set felt no different from being in her father's darkroom. Everyone utterly focused on the moment at hand, every movement needing to be captured with respect for the finest shades of emotion. She did not think this would become her path. Yet standing among people who told stories through their eyes, their breath, and the smallest gestures, Mia began to sense that a part of herself, one that had long been asleep, was starting to awaken. The role was small, but it opened a world of irresistible pull, a place where she could borrow a character's voice to speak the things she herself did not dare to say. Then, legend arrived as a first true trial, one no one could have prepared her for. In 1985, at the age of 18, Mia was cast as Princess Lily in Ridley Scott's fantasy film, a project so vast that even she felt disoriented, realizing she was standing inside a world that had previously existed only in imagination. White unicorns, moss-covered artificial forests, layers of dim, otherworldly light, all combined to create a reality of breathtaking, surreal beauty. For Mia, it was more than an opportunity. It was proof that an introverted soul could still become the center of a vast universe, so long as it remained faithful to its own rhythm. Yet the magic of legend came with a lesson in growing up far too early. That day, the entire crew was working as usual at Pinewood when the sky suddenly shifted in a way no one was prepared for. Black smoke began to rise from the main set, where the mythical forest, crafted over months by the team, stood, and within moments it grew so thick that it swallowed the light above. Large wooden structures caught fire, and the red flames spread faster than anyone could have imagined. Chaos erupted, voices calling out, hurried footsteps, collapsing set pieces, and breaths caught in panic. Some broke down in tears as they watched the labor of hundreds vanish before their eyes. Others stood frozen, unsure what to do with their trembling hands. The air was heavy with an inexpressible sense of loss, a feeling only those who truly live within the world of cinema can fully understand. Amid that chaos, Mia, only 18 years old, still a very new face in Hollywood, felt a chill run down her spine. Not out of fear, but from the realization that the dreamlike world she was helping to create was, in fact, so fragile that a single incident could sweep it all away. The magnificent sets, the ethereal lighting, the seemingly immortal moments on film, all of it rested on materials that could burn, shatter, and collapse within minutes. Watching the crew struggle to steady themselves, to improvise amid circumstances far beyond their control, Mia suddenly felt older than she had just days before. For the first time in her life, she understood that cinema is not woven from magic alone. It is built from unforeseen losses as well, from moments when months of labor are reduced to ashes. And it was that choking sense of grief that planted in Mia a new awareness. Filmmaking exists not only to create imaginary worlds for audiences, but also to test the quiet resilience of those who stand behind them. Emerging from legend, Mia carried with her a new understanding of the acting profession. It was not merely the magic of transformation, It was a journey through uncharted terrain, where dreamlike beauty always stands beside the vertigo that an entire crew must endure together. If real life sometimes shielded her from turmoil, then cinema, in its own singular way, forced her to confront fragility and change head-on. Within that world that appeared at its most radiant, Mia saw most clearly the figure within herself, a soul so sensitive it was easily wounded, an intuition constantly attuned to the faintest tremors, and a quiet yet persistent awareness that each role was never just a job. It was a fragment of her search for self, a piece of a journey that even Mia herself did not always know where it was leading. At 18, while most of her peers were still struggling to find their place in life, Mia stepped onto the set of Ferris Bueller's Day Off with a naivety that had yet to be protected. No one knew that this small film about youthful rebellion would become a cultural phenomenon across America, nor that Mia's gentle face would be forever tied to the image of Sloane Peterson, the ideal girlfriend, a symbol of elegance and freedom in a turbulent era. But for Mia, entering that film was not a moment of confidence. It was an instinctive act of survival within a world that was both alluring and overwhelmingly vast for an introverted young woman. Mia was the youngest actress among the main cast, and that alone created an invisible distance she had to cross on her own. Matthew Broderick and Alan Ruck were both older and far more experienced, which often made Mia feel as though she had stepped into a room where everyone else had long been familiar with one another. She later admitted that she felt as if she had been captured on film at the most awkward stage of her life, a feeling so genuine it could be sensed in the way she stood, the way she held her gaze, the way she tried to maintain Sloane's composure. That quiet awkwardness, almost imperceptibly, gave the character depth. Sloane felt real not because she was perfect, but because of those fragile spaces the audience could not quite name. While the filming often unfolded amid the lighthearted, playful atmosphere that defined the movie, Mia lived between two worlds, the exuberant world of Ferris and Cameron, and the private one where she questioned whether she truly belonged in a project of that scale. Remarkably, it was precisely that inner fragility that helped create the emotional balance of Ferris Bueller's Day Off. If Ferris embodied boldness and Cameron embodied insecurity, then Sloane was the gentle point of harmony that kept the entire story in rhythm. When the film was released, everything surpassed the expectations of everyone involved. Ferris Bueller's Day Off was not only a box office success, it quickly became a cultural touchstone of the 1980s, a film young audiences watched to find themselves and older viewers revisited to remember the youth they had left behind. As for Mia, the young woman who had only just entered cinema, she suddenly found herself at the center of an attention she had never imagined. Fame arrived too early and too intensely, leaving her with the sensation of a powerful spotlight being switched on all at once, aimed at a soul still feeling its way toward a professional identity. It was not an explosion of joy, but a gentle, creeping overwhelm, like an introvert placed under too many watching eyes without time to prepare. The film's success became an inseparable milestone in Mia's career. It placed her firmly on Hollywood's map, opening significant doors to larger projects such as Queenie, A Stranger Among Us, and most notably Timecop, the film that earned her the prestigious Saturn Award. Yet the light of Sloane Peterson did more than illuminate her path. It also cast a long shadow over every step that followed. Any role Mia took on was inevitably measured against the audience's memory of the gentle girl in the white coat. As a result, each career choice became an act of self-questioning. Would this new role help her break free from that romanticized image of youth? Or would it only thicken the mold that time had already begun to set? For an introverted artist who constantly longed for authenticity, the spotlight was not always a reward. At times, it felt like an invisible pressure, making her question whether she could withstand other people's expectations, while deep inside, her heart was searching for a quiet enough space to breathe. It was within that silence that Mia's journey toward maturity began to take shape. A journey that was both grateful for the gift Sloane had brought her and determined to learn how not to be consumed by the very thing that had carried her into the light. Under the intense glare of Ferris Bueller's Day Off, Mia realized she needed to redefine the road ahead before the glow of Sloane Peterson swallowed every other possibility. She did not want to remain America's youthful face forever. She wanted roles with depth, with challenge, with emotional layers thick enough for a sensitive actress like her to breathe within. And so, rather than choosing predictable scripts, Mia set out in search of diversity. A journey that was at times harshly lit, at times clouded by doubt. Yet it was precisely within those shifting zones of light and shadow that a new acting identity began to form. The first milestone of that transformation was Queenie in 1987. This was no simple project. The story was inspired by the life of Merle Oberon, a woman of striking beauty who concealed deep pain about her own origins. To take on the role, Mia had to look inward at her own fragility, to learn how to remain steady alongside towering figures in film history such as Kirk Douglas and Claire Bloom. They did not intimidate her, but their presence forced her to grow up faster, to learn how to hold her ground in emotionally demanding scenes, to accept that her youthfulness was something she could not hide, only transform into honesty. The Queenie set was far from comfortable. Prolonged, scorching heat left Mia at times so exhausted that she suffered from heat stroke, forcing production to pause while she recovered. Yet those harsh conditions made her realize that acting was not merely about lights, dialogue, or beautiful frames. It was sweat, labored breath, and the will to keep a character alive even when the body itself wanted to give in. When Queenie aired, critical response was divided. The New York Times was cautious, even cold. The Chicago Tribune was more generous, recognizing in her the endurance of a young actress striving to break free from an earlier glow. And in those days of absorbing mixed reactions, Mia learned her first major lesson after Ferris. Talent is not measured by praise, but by the ability to stand firm in the face of responses that fall short of expectation. A few years later, she appeared in A Stranger Among Us under the direction of Sidney Lumet. The role was not large, but the way Lumet guided his actors made Mia feel as though she had stepped into a classroom without a blackboard, one where every question pointed back to human nature itself. Lumet did not demand beauty, he demanded truth. For an actress who lived by intuition like Mia, this was an ideal environment to reach more delicate emotional shades. Though the film was not a blockbuster, it taught her that acting sometimes needs to be quieter, deeper, like an underground current, unshowy, yet enduring. Mia continued to assert herself as she entered the world of sci-fi television with Time Tracks, where the role of Annie Knox required her to adapt to an entirely different mode of performance. The set lacked the grandeur of cinema. There were only temporary props, expanses of green screen, and countless elements that would be created later in post-production. Mia had to learn to believe in things that did not yet exist, to express genuine emotion within a space full of technical markers, to time every beat and every glance so they would align with effects she herself could barely imagine. This was not a period of explosive fame, but rather the phase in which Mia built the most solid foundation of her career. Scorching days on set, destabilizing mixed reviews, repeated crossings beyond her comfort zone to try new genres. All of it became the quiet baggage that carried her toward another radiant moment. A moment when, for the first time, she no longer stood in the shadow of Sloane Peterson, but in light of her own. That moment was called Timecop, where Mia not only matured, but also proved that an actor's strength does not lie in the role that first makes them famous, but in the silent preparation that leads to the role that earns them recognition. The years of steady work from Queenie to Time Tracks accumulated within her like a reserve of endurance, unseen, yet always present. Stepping away from quieter projects, Mia carried with her a clear sense that she was drawing closer to a challenge large enough to move beyond Sloane Peterson's shadow. When she received the Timecop script, Mia knew immediately that this was the turning point. Acting opposite Jean-Claude Van Damme, a star whose energy was explosive, she discovered an entirely different balance. He was forceful. She was restrained. He led with physicality. She led with emotion. That contrast created an unexpected harmony, giving their love story a depth rarely found in sci-fi action films. For Mia, Melissa was not merely a supporting character. She was the heart that allowed audiences to feel the cost of a war fought across time. To make Melissa feel real, Mia had to shed her familiar reserve and give the character the same softness and quiet resilience that lived within herself. The behind-the-scenes experience of Timecop told a different story altogether, one in which Mia had to confront challenges she had never faced before. The intimate scene between her and Van Damme, a sequence lasting only a few minutes on screen, actually required hours of both psychological and technical preparation. The prop team offered protective pads, which Mia found more uncomfortable than reassuring. Van Damme, meanwhile, was so embarrassed that his awkwardness bordered on endearing, offering her a kind of organic beer he had brought along in an attempt to ease the tension. The two rehearsed their lines while laughing at the excessive seriousness surrounding a scene meant to feel light and natural. Van Damme even introduced Mia to odd physical exercises he believed would help the body look better on camera, leaving her both confused and amused. Yet within that shared awkwardness, she came to understand the essence of acting. There are moments that demand performers move past all personal inhibitions in order to protect the emotional truth of a character. When Timecop was released in 1994, it immediately became the biggest box office hit of Van Damme's career. For Mia, however, the more meaningful moment was hearing her name announced for the Saturn Award for Best Supporting Actress. It was not the most glamorous honor, but it was recognition she had never imagined reaching. For the first time, audiences and critics saw in her not only gentle beauty, but skill, subtlety, and endurance. All the qualities forged over years spent standing in just enough light. Standing at that peak, Mia did not feel victorious. She felt light. For Timecop answered the questions that had followed her for nearly a decade. Did quiet effort matter? Could an introverted actress survive in a noisy world? The award gave her a clear answer. Yet, it also opened another paradox. Just as her career was shining brightest, her private life was beginning to move into a more conflicted space, where personal choices would change everything. After Timecop, Mia's path did not blaze with loud brilliance, but spread softly through choices driven more by exploration than by the pursuit of fame. She entered a territory where each role was like a new musical note, not overpowering but expanding her range. It felt as though after years of carrying weighty projects, Mia was deliberately returning to stories that allowed her to breathe, that gave her quiet instincts room to speak. Family films and fairy tales unexpectedly became her new refuge. The Impossible Elephant gave her a simple, warmly grounded character, while Jack and the Beanstalk, the real story, drew her into a mythic realm where she worked alongside Brian Henson, someone who was, at the time, merely a colleague, but would gradually become a source of rare steadiness in her life. That collaboration did not blossom only in art. It also planted the seeds for a chapter she would later cherish more than any moment of fame. Mia also ventured into animation with Little Insects, then wandered into the land of Oz with Lost in Oz, continuing to inhabit the imagined worlds that had once nurtured her childhood imagination. Returning once more to myth through The Witches of Oz, where she took on the role of Princess Languid, felt like completing a long circle, coming back to the place where her heart had first raced with wonder in legend. In these stories, she found something that action films or heavy dramas did not always offer: the gentleness of imagination, the quiet breathing space of an artist who did not wish to strain herself in order to shine. Amid those fairy tale forests and shimmering spells, one unexpected role opened an entirely different path: Harley Quinn. When she agreed to portray the character in Birds of Prey, Mia could not have known that she would become the first actress to bring Harley Quinn to audiences. Without spectacle or noise, her version of Harley carried a distinctive madness, part playful, part wounded, part reckless, yet always veiled in a darkness that few have the patience to truly look into. Mia stripped Harley of her surface flamboyance and placed her within a rougher, more layered psychological world, one that only an actress of true subtlety could reach. The series lasted only 14 episodes, yet that was enough for Mia's Harley to etch herself into viewers' memories. Not through action scenes, but through the truth carried in every glance, every tilt of the head, every moment when the character seemed to slip along the thin line between comedy and tragedy. It was this role that made audiences see Mia in an entirely new light, no longer the gentle Sloane, nor the emotionally resonant Melissa from Timecop, but an actress capable of entering the darker regions of the human psyche without losing her innate softness. Mia once said she could have played Harley forever, not because the role brought fame, but because Harley gave her something rare: absolute freedom. It was one of the few roles that flung open the door to parts of her personality she usually kept buried deep. The rebellion, the fractures, the sharp-edged humor that could make viewers laugh and then, moments later, struggle to put their feelings into words. When Birds of Prey was canceled, the sadness that reached Mia was not loud, but quiet, like a cold draft settling into the chest. It was not shock, nor the kind of disappointment Hollywood so often exaggerates, but the very real hollow feeling of an artist who had just found a role capable of holding parts of herself she had long believed would never have the chance to step into the light. Harley was a rare territory, where Mia's gentleness and darkness could stand side by side without contradiction, where black humor intertwined with restrained pain to become strength. And when that door closed after just 14 episodes, it left her with the sensation of a story cut short, too early to feel complete, too beautiful to be forgotten. Yet each of those steps, fairy tales, animation, Oz, Harley, came together to form a clearer portrait of Mia Sara, an artist who does not live by spectacle, but by a sense of truth within each role, a soul that does not seek the center of the stage, but looks for parts deep enough to hold what is difficult to name within herself. As her cinematic journey stretched on, Mia began to recognize something she had long tried to avoid naming. The light of Hollywood no longer stirred her as it once had. After 2013, her appearances on screen grew increasingly sparse, then fell silent altogether, like a lake after the last ripple fades. There was no scandal, no retirement announcement, no dramatic incident pushing her away from film sets. There was only a profoundly human choice, the choice of the heart. In those years, Mia appeared beside her children far more often than she did at press conferences or film events. She She devoted her time to warm family dinners, school drop-offs and pickups, spontaneous trips, and slowly realized that her happiness did not lie in transformation, but in quietly watching her children grow. It was that sense of peace that helped her understand why she had always felt constricted under the spotlight. Some souls are born to stand before the camera. Mia belonged to quiet rooms where emotion is nurtured in silence. In a conversation in 2016, she spoke honestly about that feeling for the first time. There was no resentment toward the profession, no regret, only a gentle awakening. She was not happy as an actress, not because of failure, but because her heart could not find lasting life within roles. The experience of inhabiting another self, no matter how beautiful, was still only one part of an artistic life, while the place where she truly exhaled lay where words could lead her. Writing opened another door for her, wide, calm, and free of spotlights. From poetry to short essays to fragmentary notes of daily life, everything gradually formed a new world she called her true home. She created a personal website where each poem felt like a breath placed at exactly the right moment, where her inner voice could be heard fully, unobstructed by any character. In an essay about an American in Paris, Mia wrote about the New York of her youth as if recalling an old memory still scented with smoke, chaotic, beautiful, and filled with colors worn down by time. Those lines helped readers understand that the artist within Mia had never disappeared. It had simply found a more fitting environment in which to bloom. She has described her life after 2013 as a kind of semi-retirement, a state both suspended and deeply intentional, not entirely stepping away from art, yet no longer allowing art to dictate her every breath. When her heart is open, she appears. When her mind needs quiet, she steps back. No more burden of image, no more fear of scrutiny, no more pressure to stand where Hollywood expects. Everything that once pulled her into an exhausting vortex, expectations, noise, unkind gazes, was left behind like a chapter already closed. Some leave the spotlight because they are wounded, others because they are forced to change direction. Mia left with the lightness of someone who had rediscovered her own heartbeat. She simply returned to where she belonged, where words replace the lens, where a quiet room is enough to hold a soul that has always yearned for honesty. And then, within that very stillness, Mia realized that silence did not mean absence. It was simply her way of taking a deep breath before reopening the small doors that led back to creativity, at a rhythm of her own choosing. When her mind grew calm and fame no longer pressed in from all sides, she began to touch art again in her own way. Not by returning to noisy film sets, but by moving toward gentler forms, poetry, short essays, voice projects, and small artistic collaborations she accepted only when her heart truly wanted to speak. At times, she lent her voice to storytelling projects. At others, she appeared at writing workshops or independent literary events, places without flashbulbs, but rich in listening. That return was quiet, unmarked by blockbusters or major roles. It resembled a small stream flowing back after a dry season, soft, clear, and entirely under her own control. For Mia, it was not a return to a profession, but a return to what made her feel alive, telling stories in the way she chose, at the moment she felt was right. In recent years, Mia's pace of life has grown even calmer and more transparent. She spends most of her time in a small, sunlit home in California, where a writing desk sits beside a window always open to the breeze. In the mornings, she brews tea and reads a few pages of poetry. In the afternoons, she writes quiet reflections and posts them to her website, a private corner known to only a few hundred people, yet perfectly aligned with her own heartbeat. Occasionally, Mia agrees to read stories for independent art projects or to take part in intimate literary workshops where no one calls her a star, but simply by the familiar name, Mia. Within that piece, she has found a happiness unbound to fame. Warm family dinners, short trips, and the security of knowing she owes the world no further appearances. Above all, Mia's 2025 is a life made whole in stillness, where art is no longer an obligation, but simply something the heart chooses to do when it feels sufficiently at ease. And within that calm, another chapter quietly opens, no less important than the rest. A chapter without a director, without a script, guided only by decisions rooted in the heart. In 1995, while working on Bullet to Beijing, Mia met Jason Connery, a man who carried both the shadow and the weight of the Connery name. There was no lightning strike, no cinematic glow, just two people finding each other in a rare moment when the pace of their profession briefly slowed. Jason saw in Mia a refinement he had never encountered before, while Mia recognized in Jason a kind of stillness she had always lacked. They married in 1996 in a ceremony so peaceful it felt almost unbelievable for a well-known family. A year later, their son Dashiell was born, and Mia's world suddenly contracted, not in a way that made it smaller, but in a way that made it clearer. Film shoots, promotional tours, auditions. All of it was pushed into a small corner of the room, making space for a child's voice, a soft blanket, for moments she had never known she would need so deeply. Motherhood did not pull her away from art, but it completely reordered her priorities. For someone as sensitive as Mia, maternal love arrived like a wave she had no desire to resist. Like many relationships that stand between two different worlds, the marriage carried fractures invisible from the outside. Jason began to feel tension within himself. The constant comparison to his father, the need to prove his own worth, and the struggle to balance career with being a father. Mia, introverted by nature and always in need of private space, sometimes retreated too far into her inner world, leaving Jason with the feeling of being shut out behind a half-closed door. The things neither of them found the courage to say aloud began to drift quietly between them. By 2002, the marriage reached its unspoken limit. There were no loud arguments, no accusations, only two people who had once loved each other realizing that love is sometimes not enough to mend two souls moving in different directions. Jason later admitted that the separation cut so deeply it felt like reliving his parents' own broken marriage. Mia, though she kept her emotions private, remained characteristically gentle. She chose to leave without inflicting another wound on her son. Together, they decided to raise Dashiell jointly, preserving something right amid so many things they had been unable to make right. That ending, in turn, opened a path Mia had never imagined. In 2005, she and Brian Henson, the man she had worked with on Jack and the Beanstalk, The Real Story, welcomed a daughter, Amelia. If her first marriage carried the fragility of two young people still searching for their place, her bond with Brian felt more like a roof built on mutual understanding. Brian had grown up in the Henson family, where art and creativity wove themselves into every breath of life. Perhaps because of that, he understood from the beginning that Mia was not someone to be drawn into the spotlight. She belonged to rooms quiet enough for words to be heard clearly. With Brian, Mia does not have to force herself to be strong, nor does she need to hide the most sensitive parts of who she is. His calm, like a warm breeze, the opposite of Hollywood's crashing waves, became a place where she could anchor herself. They married in 2010, but their bond had existed many years before that, when both understood that what held them together was not an event, but the rhythm of life they created side by side. slow, intentional, unwilling to trade peace for noise. Their small family is not a glittering fairy tale, but a home built from quiet things. Mornings scented with freshly brewed coffee, short trips taken just the four of them, no flashbulbs, no clamor, only children's laughter and the sense of safety Mia had been searching for since childhood. In that space, one sees a completely different Mia. Not the gentle Sloane, not the emotionally charged Melissa, not the sharp-edged Harley. Just Mia. A woman who spent half her life learning how to step away from blinding light in order to return to a softer brightness within herself. Some people leave their mark not through spectacle, but through a kind of resonance that can only be felt when one is still enough to listen. With Mia, that quality appears every time she enters a room, and even when she leaves it. Those who worked with her often recall a feeling that is hard to name. Whenever Mia walked onto a set, the atmosphere seemed to soften by a single beat. There were days when tension hung thick in the air, yet all it took was her greeting each person with a smile, a simple question, "Are you okay?" And the mood would quietly shift. Directors have often remarked that Mia does not act. She lives alongside her characters. That presence lies not in bursts of intensity, but in an invisible subtlety, in her gaze, in her silences, in the way she chooses exactly when to stand or when to pause. One co-star once said that when Mia listens, everyone around her naturally becomes better, because so few people make you feel truly understood. Audiences feel something similar. They remember eyes that always seem to be looking deeper into something unseen. Remember the sense of calm Mia brings, even to the smallest scenes. Some say she belongs to that rare kind of presence that makes you believe fragility can exist on screen without disguise, gentleness without explanation. The most beautiful things about Mia are not confined to her work. Her life beyond the screen is disarmingly simple for someone who once stood at the heart of Hollywood. Every evening she brews tea and reads to her children in a low, steady voice, as if laying threads gently into the air. Jason Connery once said that Mia is gentle in a way no one can teach. Brian Henson, in turn, describes her as the calmest point in the house, the place everyone instinctively goes when something inside feels unsettled. When she stepped away from the hectic rhythm of film sets to write, Mia made no announcements, offered no farewells to the public. She did not see it as a retreat, only as a return to words, to poems and short essays shared quietly in a small corner of the internet, sometimes read by only a few hundred people. Yet anyone who reads them can sense clearly that this is the voice of a soul that has learned to look inward without fear. She does not write to be seen, but to be truthful. And it is precisely that honesty that stirs a peculiar feeling in others, a desire to slow down, to be kinder to oneself. Not because she tries to provoke such feelings, but because the way she chooses to live naturally reveals what truly matters. In a place as noisy as Hollywood, she chose stillness. In a world that treats fame as a destination, she stepped away when she felt complete. Amid countless spotlights tracking every movement, she chose to stand in the shade simply to preserve peace for her heart. That choice, in its own quiet way, shines brighter than any glare. Mia's story, therefore, does not close with a loud echo, but with a resonance, light as a breath, yet lingering long enough for one to carry it after the page is turned. Is success what the world sees, or is it the place where the soul can rest when no one is watching? That, too, is what makes Mia Sara's journey so distinctive. It is not the story of a blazing star, nor of a tragedy sunk into darkness. It is the journey of a woman with a finely tuned intuition, who knows when to step forward, when to step inward, and who never allows the world to define her worth. Mia does not appear often, does not fight to hold a position, yet each appearance carries a truth powerful enough to make the viewer pause. In an era that worships speed and noise, she chooses to move slowly, to keep a patch of shade for herself, to listen to the quiet voice within rather than the roar of the crowd. And it is precisely this seemingly out-of-step rhythm that shapes her enduring beauty. A soul fragile yet resilient, a presence gentle yet unmistakable, a light that does not need to blaze in order to be remembered. As the story comes to a close, Mia's image remains, unbright, unclamorous, yet so deep it invites one to ask inwardly, is true freedom found where we are seen, or where we dare to return to our most original self? Mia did not leave the spotlight out of failure or fear. She stepped away to preserve herself, and that act, rather than any glow of fame, is her true legacy. Mia Sara's journey leaves you with something familiar, a feeling, a thought, or perhaps just a moment of stillness. No noise is needed. Just a gentle tap on the like button, a short comment, is enough to let us know that the story has found its way to your heart.